1. Let me tell you about this 1979 Oldsmobile Cutlass that's up for grabs on Craigslist for $4,500. This beauty has been a Prescott local its whole life, bought new from Lamb Chevrolet by the seller's uncle. Now, I've got to be honest with you. It's not in perfect condition, but it's got character and history. The odometer has rolled over, so we're not sure about the exact mileage, but this car's been through some changes. It's now sporting an Oldsmobile 307 V8 engine and a rebuilt Turbo 350 transmission, both upgrades from the original setup. The car's got a clean title and a fresh coat of red paint from about 22 years ago. To be straight with you, there's some surface rust in one area, but it's not a rust bucket. The interior shows its age, but that's part of its charm. It's got some cool features like tilt wheel and cruise control, though that might need some work. The AC is there but hasn't worked in years, so you might want to budget for a new compressor and lines. The steering's got a little play in it, but it's not scary to drive. The engine runs smooth with no knocks or weird noises. And as a bonus, it's never been a smoker's car, so your nose is safe. Look, this Cutlass might need some love, but it's got potential written all over it. The seller's got a ton of receipts, and some parts even have lifetime warranties. If you're looking for a project car with history, this could be your dream ride. So, if you're interested, hit up David at 928-713-8887. No lowball offers, please. This car deserves respect. Let's keep this piece of automotive history alive and kicking. 2. We're taking a look at a real classic, a 1976 Cadillac Coupe de Ville that's currently up for grabs at $15,000. This beauty is a testament to the golden age of American luxury cars, and it's got some serious presence on the road. Let's break it down for you. This Caddy is packing a massive 8.2L V8 under the hood, which was the largest production V8 engine at the time. With under 60,000 original miles on the clock, this engine has plenty of life left in it. The seller claims to drive it daily and has even taken it on long interstate trips, so you know it's reliable. The car comes with a clean title and is in good condition overall. It's sporting a blue paint job, which really suits the car's elegant lines. Inside, you'll find a plush interior complete with factory curtains. Talk about luxury. Now, I've got to be straight with you, there is one issue. The AC isn't currently working, but the seller mentions they'll address this if the car doesn't sell soon, though they'll adjust the price accordingly if they do fix it. Everything else, however, is said to be in working order. The seller has put some work into this Caddy recently. It's got new brakes, a new master cylinder, and new shocks, so the suspension should be nice and smooth. And let me tell you, these old Cadillacs ride like a dream when they're in good shape. At $15,000, it's not the cheapest classic out there, but for a well-maintained, low-mileage example of one of Cadillac's most iconic models, it could be a solid deal. The seller seems motivated and is open to offers, so there might be some wiggle room on the price. If you're in the market for a classic American luxury car that you can actually drive and enjoy, this 76 DeVille could be just the ticket. It's a lot of car for the money, and with some TLC, it could be a real showstopper. Just make sure you budget for that AC repair if you plan on cruising in the summer. 3. We're checking out a real gem, a 1970 Chevy Monte Carlo that's up for grabs at $15,000. This isn't just any Monte Carlo, folks. We're talking about a true survivor with only 65,000 miles on the clock. Let's dive into what makes this car special. First off, it's packing a numbers-matching 350 engine paired with a 350 turbo transmission. A combo that's music to any classic car enthusiast's ears. It's also an AC car, which is a nice bonus for a ride of this vintage. The seller has put some serious work into this beauty. We're looking at new disc brakes, calipers, rotors, booster, and master cylinder up front. It's got a stout 12-bolt rear axle, dual exhaust, and it's rolling on new staggered 17 rims wrapped in fresh rubber. They've even installed a new battery and windshield. Now, I've got to be honest with you, it's not perfect. The interior needs some love, specifically new seat covers and a headliner. But the door panels and side panels are said to be in great shape. There's also some minor rust in the rear quarter panel area, but the seller describes the body as straight and solid with good floor pans. Painted in green and sporting a clean title, this Monte Carlo is described as an awesome daily driver. It runs, drives, and stops, which is always good to hear about a classic car. At $15,000, it's priced in the ballpark for a solid, drivable first-gen Monte Carlo. The seller mentions they've invested a lot of time and money, and they're open to trades for specific equipment or cash offers. If you're in the market for a classic American muscle car that you can enjoy right away and gradually restore to show car status, this '70 Monte Carlo could be just the ticket. It's got good bones, some key upgrades, and plenty of potential. Just be prepared to put some work into that interior. 4. We're taking a look at a real classic, a 1970 Chevy El Camino that's currently up for grabs at $13,500. This unique car-truck hybrid is a true piece of American automotive history, and this particular example looks like it's got some serious potential. Let's break it down for you. The heart of this El Camino is a rebuilt 350 engine, paired with a rebuilt automatic transmission. That's a solid, reliable powertrain that should give you plenty of grunt whether you're cruising or hauling. The seller mentions it's their daily driver, which is always a good sign for a classic vehicle. It means everything's in working order. This El Camino comes with some nice features. It's got power steering, which makes maneuvering this long vehicle a lot easier. The interior has been spruced up with a new headliner, and it's sporting an HEI distributor for improved ignition performance. On the outside, you've got some flashy chrome rims that really pop against the body. Now I've got to be straight with you. It's not perfect. The seller mentions there's some small rust in the smuggler's box area at the bottom. However, they claim it's overall rust-free and of driver quality. That means it's not a show car, but it's solid enough for regular use. At 36,364 miles on the odometer, it's got relatively low mileage for its age. Though with classics like these, it's always good to take the mileage with a grain of salt unless you know the full history. The El Camino is currently registered and has a clean title, which is always a plus when dealing with older vehicles. At $13,500 or best offer, it's priced in the ballpark for a solid, drivable '70 El Camino. The seller seems open to offers, so there might be some room for negotiation. If you're in the market for a classic that combines the style of a muscle car with the utility of a pickup, this El Camino could be just what you're looking for. It's a driver-quality vehicle that you can enjoy right away while gradually improving over time. Just keep in mind you might need to address that rust spot sooner rather than later to keep it from spreading. 5. We're taking a look at a real gem, a 1964 Ford Thunderbird that's currently up for grabs at $12,000. This classic piece of American automotive history is sure to turn heads wherever it goes. Let's dive into what makes this T-Bird special. First off, it's largely stock, which is great news for purists. The only notable modification is a new aluminum radiator made right here in the USA. It's also sporting new tires, which is always a plus when you're looking at a classic car. Now, let's talk about that paint job. This Thunderbird is rocking a stunning brown color with gold metal flake. It's the kind of finish that'll have you looking good, whether you're cruising down Main Street or showing off at a car meet. Under the hood, you've got the classic Thunderbird V8 engine paired with an automatic transmission. The odometer shows 47,145 miles, which is pretty low for a car of this vintage, though as always with classics, take that with a grain of salt unless you know the full history. The interior is where this T-Bird really shines. According to the seller, it's all original and in extremely good condition for its age. No tears or rips to speak of, which is impressive for a 59-year-old car. It's the kind of interior that makes you feel like you've stepped back in time to 1964. The seller touts this Thunderbird as a great investment, and they might be onto something. It's in good condition overall, with a clean title, and it's ready to drive as is. But if you're the type who likes to tinker, there's potential to take it to the next level. At $12,000, it's priced competitively for a solid, drivable '64 Thunderbird. It's the kind of car that could be your daily driver, your weekend cruiser, or your show car, or all three if you're ambitious. If you're in the market for a classic American luxury coupe that combines style, comfort, and that unmistakable 60s cool, this 64 Thunderbird could be just what you're looking for. It's a slice of Americana that's ready to hit the road. Just remember, with any classic car, it's always a good idea to give it a thorough inspection before you buy. 6. We're checking out a pretty sweet ride, a 1984 Ford Mustang GT350 convertible that's up for grabs at $7,900. This isn't just any Mustang. We're talking about a one-owner California car with some serious pedigree. Let's dive into what makes this pony car special. First off, it's packing the desirable 5.0 high-output V8 engine, paired with a 5-speed manual transmission. That's a combo that'll put a smile on any gearhead's face. With only 96,000 original miles on the clock, this engine should have plenty of life left in it. Being a GT350, this Mustang comes with some nice performance upgrades. The seller mentions it has a Hurst racing steering wheel and a Halo headrest, which adds a sporty touch to the interior. It's also still running the original carburetor and fuel pump, which is great news for purists. Now I've got to be straight with you. It's not perfect. The convertible top is old and likely needs replacement. The tires are about 5 years old, though the seller says they have low mileage. Also, the tags are $400, which is something to factor into your budget if you're in California. On the plus side, this Mustang has been with the same owner since new, which often means it's been well cared for. The seller says it runs great, and being a California car, it's likely free from the rust issues that plague many classics in other parts of the country. At $7,900, it's priced in the ballpark for a solid, drivable 84 Mustang GT350 convertible. These Fox body Mustangs are gaining popularity among collectors, so this could be a good investment opportunity. If you're in the market for a classic American muscle car that you can enjoy with the top down, this 84 Mustang GT350 could be just the ticket. It's got good bones, a desirable powertrain, and the potential for some easy upgrades. Just be prepared to budget for a new convertible top and possibly new tires in the near future. 7. We're looking at a real gem, a 1981 Buick LeSabre Limited Coupe that's currently up for grabs at $14,500. Now, I know what you might be thinking. A 1981 Buick? But trust me, this isn't your average early 80s car. Let's break it down. This LeSabre is a true time capsule with only 25,400 original miles on the clock. It's sporting its original dark maple metallic paint, which has been professionally polished to a mirror shine. The interior is equally impressive, with perfect original dark maple cloth and a matching half-vinyl top in pristine condition. Under the hood, you've got Buick's 4.1L V6 with a 4-barrel Rochester quadrajet carburetor. It might not be a tire-shredding powerhouse with its 125 HP, but it's all original and, according to the seller, runs perfectly. Now, here's where it gets really impressive. Everything works, and I mean everything, right down to the clock. It's loaded with features like power steering, power brakes, AC, AM/FM stereo, tilt wheel, and cruise control. The seller even had custom carpeted floor mats made with the Buick logo to complement the pristine original rubber mats. This LeSabre has been a show car, featured in 3 concours-level events. The body is straight, rust-free, thanks to Z-Bart treatment when new, and the undercarriage is said to be nearly as clean as the top. At $14,500, it's not cheap for an 81 Buick, but you're getting a museum-quality piece of automotive history. It's the kind of car that'll turn heads not because it's flashy, but because it's so perfectly preserved. If you're in the market for a classic American luxury car that you can drive straight to a show and win awards, this 81 LeSabre could be just the ticket. It's a slice of early 80s Americana in near-perfect condition. Just remember, with a car this pristine, every mile you add is going to hurt its value a little. But man, what a sweet ride it would be. 8. We're taking a look at a real gem, a 1965 Chevy Corvair Corsa that's currently up for grabs at $12,500. Now, if you're a fan of unique American classics, this one's going to get your heart racing. Let's dive into what makes this Corvair special. First off, it's not just any Corvair. It's a Corsa model, which was the top-of-the-line performance version. Even better, It's packing a turbocharged engine paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. That's a combo that'll put a smile on any gearhead's face. The seller says this Corvair is in excellent condition, and from the description, it sounds like they're not exaggerating. It's been repainted in its original blue color and apparently looks great. The interior is described as nice, and it's got that cool vintage tachometer that came standard on the Corsa models. Now, I've got to be straight with you about the mileage. The odometer shows 105,000 miles, but it's rolled over so the actual mileage is unknown. That's pretty common for cars of this vintage, though. One of the best things about this Corvair is that the seller claims there's nothing wrong with it. That's music to a classic car buyer's ears. They say it's a great car that's just not getting driven as much as it should, which is often a good sign for a well-maintained classic. At $12,500, it's priced in the ballpark for a solid, drivable '65 Corvair Corsa, especially one with the desirable turbo engine. These cars have a fascinating history. They were Chevy's answer to the VW Beetle, with that unique rear-engine air-cooled design. If you're in the market for a classic that stands out from the usual muscle car crowd, this '65 Corvair Corsa could be just the ticket. It's a piece of American automotive history that offers a driving experience unlike anything else from its era. Just remember, as with any classic car, it's always a good idea to give it a thorough inspection before you buy. 9. We're looking at a real piece of American automotive history, a 1968 Ford Mustang that's up for grabs at $11,700. This isn't just any Mustang, it's a one-family-owned car with a heartwarming story behind it. Let's dive into what makes this pony car special. First off, it's an all-original survivor with only 118,000 miles on the clock. That's pretty low mileage for a 55-year-old car, averaging just over 2,000 miles a year. It's packing the classic 289 V8 engine, paired with an automatic transmission, a combo that offers a great balance of power and ease of driving. One of the coolest features of this Mustang is that it comes with factory air conditioning. That's a rare and desirable option for a '68 model, and the seller says everything works. Speaking of which, they claim the car runs excellently and has no leaks or rust, which is music to any classic car buyer's ears. The seller mentions that their grandparents bought this Mustang brand new in college. That kind of one-family ownership often means a car has been well cared for, and in this case, it shows. They describe it as clean inside and out, garage kept, and well maintained. Now, I've got to be straight with you. At this price point, it's probably not a show-quality car, but it sounds like it would make a fantastic daily driver or weekend cruiser. It's the kind of classic you can enjoy without worrying too much about every little scratch or stone chip. At $11,700, it's priced competitively for a solid, drivable '68 Mustang, especially one with its original engine and factory AC. These first-generation Mustangs are always in demand, and prices have been trending upward. If you're in the market for a classic Mustang that you can drive and enjoy right away, this '68 could be just the ticket. It's got good bones, a great story, and it sounds like it's ready to hit the road. Just remember, as with any classic car, it's always a good idea to give it a thorough inspection before you buy. 10. We're looking at a real gem, a 1962 Studebaker GT Hawk that's currently up for grabs at $9,800. Now, if you're into rare classics with a hot rod twist, this one's going to get your heart racing. Let's dive into what makes this Studebaker special. First off, it's one of only 500 left in the world according to the Studebaker Club. That alone makes it a rare bird. But what's under the hood is where things get really interesting. This GT Hawk is packing a 350 Chevy V8 with all the hot rod goodies, headers, the works. It's not original, but it sure sounds like a blast to drive. The seller's done some serious upgrades to this classic. We're talking power steering, power brakes, air conditioning, and power windows. It's got a rack and pinion steering setup from a Mustang GT, Camaro disc brakes, an aluminum drive shaft, and brand new 18-inch glass pack mufflers that the seller says sound great. Now, I've got to be straight with you about the mileage. The odometer shows 8,900 miles, but it's rolled over, so the actual mileage is unknown. That's pretty common for cars of this vintage though. The seller describes it as a daily driver and a very fun car to drive. That's always good to hear about a classic. It means everything's in working order, and it's not just a garage queen. At $9,800, it's priced pretty competitively for such a rare car with so many upgrades. Sure, it's not all original, but for someone looking for a unique classic that's been hot-rodded for better drivability, this could be a great find. If you're in the market for a classic that stands out from the usual muscle car crowd, this 62 Studebaker GT Hawk could be just the ticket. It's a piece of American automotive history that's been updated to be a fun, reliable driver. Just remember, as with any classic car, especially one with modifications, it's always a good idea to give it a thorough inspection before you buy. 11. We're taking a look at a real blast from the past, a 1950 Plymouth Deluxe that's currently up for grabs at $7,000. If you're into post-war American classics, this one's going to catch your eye. Let's dive into what makes this Plymouth special. First off, it's a survivor from the early 50s that's still running and driving. The seller's been taking it to shows, so you know it's in presentable condition. It's got that classic 218 cubic inch flathead 6-cylinder engine, paired with a 3-speed manual transmission on the column, a combo that'll give you a true taste of 1950s motoring. Now I've got to be straight with you. It's not perfect. The seller's honest about a few issues. The clutch shudders a bit when you're letting it out, the engine's got a small oil leak, and the steering box could use some attention. But hey, that's par for the course with a 73-year-old car, right? On the plus side, this Plymouth's got some good things going for it. It's been repainted at some point, which freshens up its look. And being a California car originally, it's not all rusted out like many cars of this vintage can be. It's still running on its original 6-volt positive ground electrical system, which is pretty cool for the purists out there. The odometer shows 68,510 miles, but with a car this old, it's hard to say if that's original or if it's rolled over. Either way, it's clear this Plymouth's seen some miles but still has life left in it. At $7,000, it's priced pretty reasonably for a drivable classic from the 50s. It's the kind of car that'll turn heads at local shows or cruise nights, and with some TLC, it could be a really sweet ride. If you're in the market for an affordable entry into the world of classic cars, this 1950 Plymouth Deluxe could be just the ticket. It's got character, it's drivable, and it's a piece of automotive history. Just remember, with a car this old, you're buying a project as much as a vehicle. But man, what a cool project it would be. 12. We're looking at a real gem from the 70s, a 1977 Chrysler Cordoba that's up for grabs at $14,000. Now, if you're a fan of classic American luxury with a bit of muscle, this one's going to pique your interest. Let's dive into what makes this Cordoba special. First off, it's been in the same family since new. That's 46 years of history right there. Being a New Mexico car, it's rust-free, which is a huge plus for a vehicle of this vintage. This Cordoba has undergone some serious restoration work. The 360 motor and 904 transmission were rebuilt about 3,000 miles ago, so you've got a powertrain that's practically fresh. The interior's been redone with new upholstery, giving it that plush 70s luxury feel. Now here's where it gets interesting for the hot rod enthusiasts. The firewall's been shaved for a cleaner look, and there's hidden wiring under the hood. Nice touches that show attention to detail. The bumpers have been shaved and re-chromed, which must look pretty slick. Add in the headers with dual exhaust, and you've got a Cordoba that not only looks good but sounds good too. The seller's being upfront about the AC, it's not hooked up. So if you're in a hot climate, that might be something you'll want to address. The odometer shows 98,000 miles, which isn't bad for a 46-year-old car. At $14,000, it's priced on the higher end for a 77 Cordoba. But you're getting a car that's had a lot of work done to it. It's not just a survivor, it's been thoughtfully restored and modified. If you're in the market for a classic luxury cruiser with some muscle car flair, this 77 Cordoba could be just the ticket. It's got the comfort of a luxury car with some performance upgrades that make it more than just a highway cruiser. Just remember, as with any classic car, especially one with modifications. It's always a good idea to give it a thorough inspection before you buy. 13. We're checking out a real gem, a 1964 Mercury Caliente that's up for grabs at $15,000. Now, if you're into classic Fords with a bit of hot rod flair, this one's going to get your heart racing. Let's dive into what makes this Caliente special. First off, it's packing a rebuilt 1993 302 V8 engine with early heads, a weigh-end intake, and a 4-barrel carb. The seller just dropped in a new E303 cam and changed the brake-in fluids, so you know it's fresh. It's paired with a rebuilt C4 automatic transmission with a 2800 stall converter. That's a combo that'll give you some serious punch off the line. The drivetrain upgrades don't stop there. We're talking about a rebuilt 9-inch rear end with new Yukon Posei 3.55 gears, professionally dialed in. The front suspension's been rebuilt, and it's rolling on almost new tires and rims. It's got dual exhaust, so you know it sounds mean. Now, I've got to be straight with you. It's not 100% complete. The interior needs finishing, and there's some trim work to be done. The seller mentions a little paint touch-up is needed too. But the body is described as perfect and rust-free, with excellent chrome bumpers and new window seals. The odometer shows 76,000 miles, but with all these rebuilt components, the mileage on the drivetrain is much lower. The seller says it runs, looks, and sounds great, and it's ready to cruise or grab coffee right now. At $15,000, it's priced pretty competitively for a classic Mercury that's had this much work done to it. It's not just a survivor, it's been thoughtfully upgraded for better performance. If you're in the market for a classic Ford product that stands out from the usual Mustang crowd, this 64 Caliente could be just the ticket. It's got the style of the early 60s with some serious performance upgrades. Just remember, you'll need to budget for finishing the interior and some minor cosmetic work. But man, what a cool cruiser this would be when it's all buttoned up. 14. We're looking at a bit of a project car, a 1985 Pontiac Fiero that's up for grabs at $1,500. Now, if you're into 80s oddities and don't mind getting your hands dirty, this might pique your interest. Let's be straight here. This Fiero's seen better days. The seller describes it as being in fair condition, which in Craigslist speak often means needs work. It's got the V6 engine and an automatic transmission, which isn't the most desirable combo for Fiero enthusiasts, but it's what we've got here. The odometer's broken, but it's showing 124,000 miles. Given the car's age and condition, it's probably safe to assume it's got more miles than that. The seller says it runs and drives, which is always a good start for a project car. However, they're honest enough to admit they wouldn't take it on a long trip. That's a pretty clear indication that this Fiero needs some TLC. One big red flag here is the missing title. That could be a headache depending on your state's laws, so you'll want to factor that into your decision. On the plus side, it's painted red, which is a classic color for these mid-engine Pontiacs. But given the overall condition, I wouldn't expect the paint to be pristine. The seller's motivation is clear. They've got a new baby and need to clear out some projects to make room and money for diapers and formula. That might mean they're open to reasonable offers. At $1,500, it's priced about right for a running, driving Fiero that needs work. These cars have a cult following, and parts are generally available. If you're handy with a wrench and looking for a quirky 80s project car, this could be a fun one to tackle. Just remember, you're not buying a turnkey classic here. You're buying a project that's going to need some work before it's ready for regular driving or shows. But if you're up for the challenge, this little Fiero could be a cool addition to your garage. 15. We're taking a look at a classic piece of American automotive history, a 1979 Ford Thunderbird that's up for grabs at $6,900. Now, if you're into late 70s luxury coupes, this one might just catch your eye. Let's dive into what we know about this T-Bird. The seller is keeping things pretty brief, but they're hitting some key points that potential buyers will want to hear. First off, they say it runs and drives great, which is always good news for a car that's over 40 years old. The odometer is showing 80,000 miles, which isn't too bad for a vehicle of this vintage. Of course, with older cars, you always want to take mileage claims with a grain of salt unless you've got documentation to back it up. One of the big pluses here is that the car's got new tires. That's a nice bit of maintenance that you won't have to worry about right away. The seller also mentions that the motor and transmission are good, which suggests the powertrain is in decent shape. Now, I've got to be straight with you. We're not getting a ton of details here. The seller describes the condition as good, but without more information or pictures, it's hard to know exactly what that means for a car from 1979. These big 70s cars can sometimes hide rust or other issues, so you definitely want to give it a thorough inspection before buying. At $6,900, it's priced in the ballpark for a solid, drivable 79 Thunderbird. These aren't the most sought-after classics out there, but they've got a certain 70s cool factor that's hard to deny. If you're in the market for a classic American luxury coupe that you can drive and enjoy right away, this 79 T-Bird could be worth a look. It sounds like it's in decent shape and ready to cruise. Just remember, as with any classic car, it's always a good idea to give it a thorough inspection before you buy. And don't be afraid to ask the seller for more details or additional pictures. 16. We're checking out a piece of 80s muscle, a 1982 Chevy Camaro Z28 that's up for grabs at $7,500. If you're into third-gen Camaros, this one might just get your heart racing. Let's dive into what we know about this Z28. First off, it's packing the original 305 V8 engine, which is always a plus for collectors who value originality. With 84,000 miles on the clock, it's got relatively low mileage for a car that's over 40 years old. That suggests it might have been well cared for or spent some time in storage. The seller says it's still wearing its original paint, which is pretty impressive for a car of this age. They're describing the overall condition as good, which is encouraging. However, keep in mind that good can mean different things to different people, especially when it comes to 40-year-old cars. Now, I've got to be straight with you. There is one issue mentioned. The AC needs a new compressor installed. But here's the good news. The seller is including a new compressor with the car. So while you'll need to factor in the cost of installation, at least you won't have to hunt down the part. This Z28 comes with an automatic transmission, which might not be every enthusiast's first choice, but it does make for easier cruising. The title is clean, which is always a relief when dealing with older vehicles. At $7,500, it's priced in the ballpark for a solid 82 Camaro Z28, especially one with relatively low miles and its original engine. These third-gen Camaros are starting to gain more appreciation among collectors, so this could be a good opportunity to get into the market. If you're in the market for a classic American muscle car from the 80s that you can enjoy right away and potentially appreciate in value, this 82 Camaro Z28 could be worth a look. Just remember, as with any classic car, it's always a good idea to give it a thorough inspection before you buy. And don't be afraid to ask the seller for more details or additional pictures, especially of that original paint. 17. We're looking at a real gem from the 70s, a 1974 Mercury Cougar XR7 that's up for grabs at $5,500. If you're into classic American luxury coupes with a bit of muscle, this one's going to catch your eye. Let's dive into what makes this Cougar special. First off, it's packing a rebuilt 351 Cleveland V8 engine. That's a power plant with a great reputation among Ford fans. The seller says it runs good with no issues, which is always music to a classic car buyer's ears. One of the standout features here is the fresh paint job. It's sporting an orange color, which must look pretty sharp on those sleek 70s body lines. The seller describes the condition as excellent, which is promising for a nearly 50-year-old car. Now, I've got to be straight with you. The seller's being pretty upfront about this Cougar's condition. They're claiming no leaks, no squeaks, and no BS. That's the kind of straightforward talk we like to hear. The odometer shows 85,000 miles, which isn't bad for a car of this vintage. One big plus here is the clean California title. If you've dealt with classic cars before, you know how much of a headache title issues can be, so this is a relief. The registration is current, and the seller has the pink slip in hand. At $5,500, it's priced pretty competitively for a solid, drivable 74 Cougar XR7, especially one with a rebuilt engine and fresh paint. These aren't the most sought-after classics out there, but they've got a certain 70s cool factor that's hard to deny. If you're in the market for a classic American luxury coupe that you can drive and enjoy right away, this '74 Cougar XR7 could be worth a look. It sounds like it's in good shape and ready to cruise. Just remember, as with any classic car, it's always a good idea to give it a thorough inspection before you buy, and don't be afraid to ask the seller for more details about those many other upgrades they mentioned. 18. We're looking at a real gem. A 1963 Ford Falcon that's up for grabs at $11,100. Now, if you're into early 60s Fords with a bit of hot rod flair, this one's going to get your heart racing. Let's dive into what makes this Falcon special. First off, it's the last year of this beautiful body style, which is always a plus for collectors. The seller's owned it since 2015 and has put some serious work into it. What started as a daily driver with an inline six has been transformed into a potential powerhouse with a fully rebuilt 289 V8 out of a '66 Mustang. Now, I've got to be straight with you. This car isn't currently drivable. It needs some wiring and installation work to get it road ready. But don't let that scare you off, because the bones of this build are solid. The rebuilt 289 is decked out with some serious performance parts. Roller rocker lifters, a comp cam, HEI distributor, and a 4-barrel Holly Street Avenger carb. It's got Hedman headers that the seller says sound amazing. The engine's got a black and chrome theme going on, which should look pretty sharp under the hood. Transmission-wise, we're looking at a 4-speed top-loader, which is a great match for that 289. The rear end is a narrowed 8.8 Posey unit out of a 2000 Explorer with a disc brake setup. It needs to be installed, but that's a serious upgrade from the original Falcon rear. The sellers included a ton of other goodies: a new heavy-duty radiator, a wiring harness with a new fuse box, and even an extra Holly carb. They've also thrown in some alloy wheels to give it a more modern look. At $11,700, you're not buying a turnkey classic here. You're buying a project with a lot of potential and a lot of the expensive parts already sourced. If you're handy with a wrench and looking for a unique Falcon to make your own, this could be a great opportunity. Just remember, you'll need to budget for finishing the build and getting it roadworthy. But once it's done, you'll have a '63 Falcon that'll turn heads at car shows and light up the streets. 19. We're looking at a piece of American automotive history, a 1972 Buick Skylark that's up for grabs at $8,100. Now, if you're into 70s classics with a bit of rarity thrown in, this one might just catch your eye. Let's dive into what we know about this Skylark. The seller tells us it's a rare bird with only 1,500 made. That's definitely a selling point for collectors who like something a bit different. Under the hood, we've got a 350 cubic inch V8 with a 2-barrel carb. It's not the most powerful setup, but it should provide plenty of smooth cruising power. Now, I've got to be straight with you. This Skylark isn't perfect. The seller describes it as being in fair condition, which usually means it needs some work. They're upfront about a couple of issues. The front brakes need attention, and the front seat needs to be recovered. Those are definitely things you'll want to factor into your budget if you're considering this car. On the plus side, the seller says it runs good, which is always encouraging for a car that's over 50 years old. They also emphasize that it's not a rust bucket at all, which is a big deal for cars of this vintage. Rust can be a real nightmare, so a solid body is a good starting point. The odometer shows 9,860 miles, but it's rolled over, so the actual mileage is unknown. That's pretty common for cars of this age, so no big surprise there. At $8,100, with the seller stating the price is firm, it's not the cheapest '72 Skylark out there. But if it's truly as rare as the seller claims, and if the body is as solid as they say, it could be a decent deal for the right buyer. If you're in the market for a classic American coupe with some potential and don't mind putting in a bit of work, this '72 Skylark could be worth a look. Just remember, you'll need to budget for those brake repairs and seat recovery at the very least. And as always with classic cars, a thorough inspection is a must before you buy. 20. We're looking at a real-time capsule, a 1967 Chevrolet Chevelle Malibu that's up for grabs at $6,900. Now, if you're into barn finds and restoration projects, this one might just get your heart racing, or make you scratch your head depending on your perspective. Let's dive into what we've got here. This Chevelle is about as original as they come, having been stored in a barn since 1992 until a couple of years ago. It's packing the original 283 V8 engine paired with a Powerglide automatic transmission, a classic combo for cruising if not for speed demons. Now I've got to be straight with you. This car needs some serious TLC. The seller is upfront about its condition, describing it as fair. There's damage to the rear driver's door and quarter panel from when it was pulled out of storage. It's got some rust in the usual spots: lower quarters, front fenders, under the battery box, and some rot in the trunk floor. Here's where it gets a bit tricky. The car doesn't run, and the seller hasn't even tried to start it. There's no title and no keys. That's going to be a headache to sort out, depending on your state's laws. On the plus side, the interior has been gutted and cleaned after years of serving as a mouse hotel. The wiring under the dash is reportedly in excellent shape, which is a small miracle given its history. The seller's throwing in some new parts, brakes for all four corners and front steering components. That's a good start, but make no mistake, this is a project car through and through. At $6,900, you're not buying a ready-to-cruise classic. You're buying potential, history, and a whole lot of work. If you're the type who loves the challenge of bringing a neglected classic back to life, this could be your dream project. But if you're looking for something to drive anytime soon, you might want to keep looking. Remember, with a project like this, a thorough inspection is crucial. You'll want to factor in not just the purchase price, but also the cost of parts, potential engine work, body work, and the hassle of sorting out the title situation. Happy hunting, Chevelle fans, and may the restoration gods be with you if you take this one on.